An accurate thing.
Captain Jackson. Didn't know you would call me last week. Apologize, but
That's okay.
I never put home number one. I don't even look at my
Good evening. Being a little after 7 o'clock, I'd like to call this meeting of the Chelmsford Board of Selectmen to order. May 21st, please join me in the pledge of allegiance.
1002.
I pledge allegiance.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, you may have noticed Ken is not here tonight, so it'll be 4 of us. We have a quorum. First one announcement that Chelmsford Telemedia will be broadcasting this meeting live and taping it for later broadcast. Are there any other members of the press here tonight? Chelmsford Independent, thank you. We have some public service announcements tonight. Is anyone here from?
Captain Jackson.
How are you tonight?
Hi, good evening, everybody. We're here tonight with the Merrimack Valley Vietnam veterans, Bob Casper and Bob Cronin. And the Merrimack Valley Vietnam veterans have agreed to step up and be the co-host for the Memorial Day Parade when it's in the center. As some of you may know, we alternate every year from North Chelmsford to the town center for the parade. And when it's in North, the American Legion Post 313 is the host, and when it's in the center, the American Legion Post 212 is the host. And in the last few years, their membership has decreased quite a bit, so they needed some help. And we're very fortunate that the Merrimack Valley Vietnam veterans, Bob and Bob, have stepped forward to kind of take on the reins for us. So I'd like to introduce you to Bob and Bob if you don't know them. So.
Well, I was a former resident of Chelmsford not many years ago, but from 1961 to 1971. My father was a superintendent of the training school in North Chelmsford, across from the Glenview. So it was a nice town to grow up in. I moved out from Somerville up to here. It was like night and day. I couldn't believe it. This is nice. And I moved I didn't move to Lowell after I got back from Vietnam. We still live in Chelmsford. I married a girl from Lowell and lived there for 42 years, and then moved to Hudson, New Hampshire for the last 5 or 6 years. And I started this group about 35 years ago now, Bob?
35 years.
35 years ago. It's a small group. And it's worked out very well. I'm glad it did stay small because we have no overhead, we have no complaints because we don't drink at any meetings, we don't drink in uniform or nothing. And I think that's why we're together today. I'll tell you, we're honored to help out anybody. That's our motto, help anybody out. Whether you're a veteran or a civilian, doesn't make any difference to us. And that's our goal, to make sure veterans are being taken care of. And the biggest thing is that a lot of veterans do not know what they're entitled to. When you tell them, they're baffled. But until they get there and take care of it, they don't know. I'd just like to say another thing too, is that we hear, thank you for your service. Well, I want to say to the town of Chelmsford, 30 years ago, you were the first town to say, thank you for your service. Because that was the first time we marched in this Chelmsford parade. We have marched every year since then. So I want to thank you very much. You made us welcome home long before everybody else did. Thank you.
He failed to mention that the two Bobs, that one's Bob Cronin, and I'm Bob Casper. I've had a business in town for about 40 years. And I guess the parade we're supposed to tell you with the parade is going to go from the old Stop and Shop parking lot down Chelmsford Street, take a left onto Fletcher Street, take a right onto Route 4, take a left at the funeral home. Was it?
Worthing Street.
Yeah, Worthing Street, I couldn't remember the street. And then take a left and come all the way down to the center. And the Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts, the band, we're gonna meet between 9 and 10 o'clock, and we're gonna step off at 10 a.m. Yep, we're gonna step off at 10 a.m. and end up at the Common, and I guess somebody from the board will speak for the town and read our proclamation, have our guest speakers, and it should be short and sweet, because there's nobody in our organization that's long-winded. Thank you.
Thanks, Bo.
Would you like to read the proclamation?
So I just want to remind everyone, so everybody's welcome. It's next Monday, 10 a.m. in Town Center. So if anybody asks, especially Scouts, if they, what to do to be in the parade, just tell them to show up by 9:30, and we'll have the parade, and then we'll have the...
Does rain affect it at all, one way or another?
Okay, so it did 2 years ago, for first time ever. But we have a Plan B. If it's really, 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 really bad, we're going to be able to go into the Chelmsford Center for the Arts upstairs in the Veterans Auditorium, actually, for the program portion of it. So we do have a Plan B this time. Okay.
We'd like to, I'm sure we're gonna invite, you can decide which member of the board would like to speak for the town and say a few words for Memorial Day.
I think Ken's going to do it.
Okay.
As of last week. As of last
That's
week.
where he is tonight, he's
Is that because-
practicing.
Is that
Ken, are
because
you
he's
doing
not
it?
here?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, he's writing the speech tonight.
Okay,
In the back row.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Thank you.
Read the proclamation.
We have a proclamation to read. The Town of Chelmsford proclamation in recognition of Memorial Day, May 28th, 2018. Whereas Memorial Day, May 28th, 2018, has been set aside as an annual day of remembrance for those men and women who served our nation during times of conflict as members of the armed forces. And whereas we pause this day to especially remember those who made the ultimate sacrifice of their lives to defend the freedom of all Americans. And whereas we honor the service and sacrifice of all veterans of all wars and conflicts and join the living veterans of the town of Chelmsford in expressing our gratitude to their fallen comrades. Now, therefore, we, the Chelmsford Board of Selectmen, do hereby proclaim Monday, May 28th, 2018, as Memorial Day, 2018, and join all residents of the town in recognizing the deceased veterans of Chelmsford on this solemn day.
Signed.
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 Signed by Patricia Zuris, Town Clerk, Glenn Diggs, Emily Antle, George Dixon, Pat Wojtas, and we assume Ken, when he gets back, will sign it.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you all next Monday.
Just one thing, Bob Cronin, you didn't live across from the Morse School, did
Wait
you?
for him to sign
What
it.
did you say?
In Somerville?
We live down there between Teal Square, Pothouse Boulevard, and Davis Square,
Okay, I just screwed up.
West Somerville.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We also have the DPW food drive. Anyone here to speak about that? Are you driving the truck?
No, I don't have a CDL.
You want to buy one?
You got one? Good evening, Gary Persichetti, DPW. I'm here to talk about the DPW food drive, which started today. The food drive coincides with the National Public Works Week. During this week, hundreds of public works departments across New England will be collecting non-perishables and donating to the local food pantries. All of our items will be donated to Chelmsford Food Pantry. The drop-off sites are DPW from the 21st to the 24th from 8 to 4. Chelmsford Town Offices, 21 to 24th, 8:30 to 4. Chelmsford Senior Center, the 21st to the 24th, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then Dr. Lang was nice enough to let us do it within the schools, but the drop-off is only for school personnel within their own buildings. We will be at Market Basket on Friday with a truck and some of our guys out there, and we're going to bring the gator for the kids to look at and be able to sit on and stuff, and we'll be there Friday, the 24th, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So we encourage everyone to stop by and donate, and I did want to say that, as you know, we put 2 bins out during the town meeting for those 2 nights, and we collected 207 items which have already been donated from that alone. Thank you to town meeting reps.
Just one question. When people arrive with their items, should they be in bags, a box, loose?
They can be in bags, they can be in boxes or loose. There are boxes that were provided by our dumpster company for us to use, and they have bags within them, so it really doesn't matter. Either way is fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have open session. Is anyone here tonight to speak on any issue? No one? Right. We have some committee vacancies. Would you like to read them, Emily?
Yes. My apologies, I was looking at the table of contents, not the items. Committee vacancies as of 5/21/18. The Center Village Master Plan Implementation Committee, there's 1 vacancy. The Civic Committee, there are 4 vacancies. The Community Action Program Committee, there are 2 vacancies. The Cultural Council, up to 21 vacancies. The Energy Conservation Committee, up to 2. The Holiday Decorating Committee, 3. The Parade Committee, all applicants welcome. The Planning Board, there is 1 associate position. The Public Celebrations Committee, there are 5 positions. The Recycling Committee, 1. The Sign Advisory Committee, 2. The Skate Park Committee, 2. And the Vinyl Square Strategic Action Plan Committee, 1. If you are interested in serving on a town board or committee, please apply on the town website or contact the town manager's office.
Right, we have a couple of licenses here tonight. First is a special license to sell wine at an agricultural event, the Aranap Sellers LLC, Chelmsford Town Common Farmers Market. And for those who thought the farmers market was not going to be in effect this year, it is going to be in effect, except it's going to be on Saturdays from 6:16 to 9:15. Is there anyone here from that group tonight?
Good evening. I'm Noel Powell. I'm the owner of Aranap Sellers. We've been familiar face. We've been at the Chelmsford Agway Winter Market for several years. Tried the Thursday market once. With the move to Saturday, we're excited to come in and help the Saturday market grow.
Thank you. Someone want to make a motion?
I motion to
Accept.
accept the application.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
4-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck. We also have a change in manager, all alcoholic beverages restaurant, DGC restaurant, DBA Feng Shui, 285 Chelmsford Street. Is there anyone here from them tonight? Being none, obviously it's well-known in the town, and it's just a change of manager. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to accept the change.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All those, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4-0. Thank you. Town manager performance appraisal form, which we discussed last time, and we asked our personnel director to come in tonight. We said to try to get you on early.
Okay. Good
Moving
evening.
along.
I'm Jean Parziali, the Human Resources Director for the town.
So did you have a chance to look through the suggested form that we had come up with?
I did.
Did you have any changes or suggestions?
I have a couple of suggestions. The first being the position title. on the form says Town Administrator. That should be Town Manager in Chelmsford. I have a comment on Category 4, which is Relations with Other Governments and Agencies. Item number 2. It mentions utilizes the resources available at Massachusetts Municipal Association, Metropolitan Area Planning Council, and the MBTA Board. Those last two groups are not relevant to Chelmsford. I would
Which page
yes.
is it? Which section?
It's on Category 4.
Category 4. Yes, okay.
So those last two, I would suggest replacing possibly with NEMCOG, because we do business, we do associate with NEMCOG.
And the LRTA.
And the LRTA, that's right, that's another group. So maybe we should just add those two. The last page, which has a signature block for the selectmen. I'm just curious, is that just one signature, or are you going to list all 5 members on there? It wasn't clear.
Well, the idea was that all of them would do it, so they would all have their own version of it.
Separately.
Right.
Oh, I see.
And then there's, we're kind of up in the air at this point a little bit in terms of how to put it together. There was a recent litigation in Wayland, I believe.
Wayland, yes.
And so I think we still need to get some clarification of how we're going to wrap that up.
Okay.
I think there was some discussion in terms of should we use it, since it's a brand-new form and it's a brand-new way to do things.
Mhm.
Typically, we were going to use it for both the town manager and for the town accountant.
I see.
But seeing it's a new form, my gut feeling, and again, the board can comment on this, perhaps we should just use it for the town manager this time, use the old system for the town accountant, or do you feel we should use it for both of them?
So where it's new, you may want to consider using it going forward. So not to review the past year, but perhaps to put it in place for the next year. That way, you allow the manager and the town accountant to know what they're being evaluated on.
So that we would vote on it, we would use the old form for
for
this
the-
July.
Right,
But this would become the new form
going
beginning
forward.
next year,
Correct.
okay?
And then use it for both.
How do you
If you
feel about
choose
that,
to.
George?
I think it sounds right. I mean, I mean, they haven't had a chance. We're only gonna make the recommendations next July. I mean, it would only be right that they would, both of them, or each one would know what they were gonna be,
And it would give a shakeout time for this new Wayland legislation to see what happens with it, probably.
Well, I think that's going to be no matter what we use, what form we use. I mean, as far as consolidating it and working with each other on it. I guess one question I would have, or comment I would have about that, is that it is, a lot of the items that are listed are specific to a town manager's position and not an accountant's.
Well, that's the part that I thought was a little, the first idea of it was to use it really for the town manager, who has more visibility in many aspects of what he does.
Mhm.
The town accountant is more specific in terms of what she does.
You might want to
These things
customize it a
don't
little more
really
to
apply.
her position. The format, I thought you just meant the format.
Is there a way that you feel that you can work with this to come up with something that would be more suitable for the town accountant or for anyone else who's not the town manager per
Right.
se?
I would look at the job description to start there.
Can you come up with some abbreviated,
Sure.
more concise, what you feel would be appropriate?
Sure, if you want to go forward using this form.
Again, it
you
would be
could,
for next
Going
year.
forward, right.
We would still use the same form that we're using now. Does that make sense to you, Pat?
Sure.
Okay. So it's kind of hard to come to a final, since Ken was the one who kind of drafted to begin with. I don't think we can come to a final resolution tonight. But I think the recommendation is fine, that we come up with, using the form, but for right now, we continue with what we have done. But as you said, Pat, we don't know how to handle what we've done in the past based on it. So, Paul, do you feel we could have town council come into the next meeting and have him look at what happened in Wayland and give us some advice? Meanwhile, we'll be doing what we normally do as far as
Individually.
review. And so we're moving forward because, every year we don't seem to get it done on time, and we should try. So we can be working on this new form, and hopefully we'll have it done within a month, a couple of meetings, we should be able to settle it.
The only other recommendation might be to have the individual make some comments about their accomplishments throughout the year. Sometimes, that's a good start, because you may not be aware of everything they've done, any awards received, or, special goals.
Right. That was going to be one of my suggestions on having to do with this form. Yeah, I think it's hard sometimes, as we have experienced in the past, to set specific goals and then rate the town manager on those goals. It's almost like a looking backward type thing is more accurate, I think, because so many times some of the more important things that the town manager might accomplish or achieve are things that we hadn't thought about a year ago. So, one of my suggestions was going to be to have something like that as far as accomplishments and maybe even deficiencies where the town manager may have fallen short as far as achieving a certain result. And also, I think there should be room for narrative explanations too about strengths and weaknesses, areas of improvement, where the town manager, does show leadership and things like that. So, I think it's good to have the detail that we have, but I also like to see some narrative too.
All right, so we will convey that to Ken, since he has worked with the document more than anyone else, and have him incorporate those kind of things, come back with a second kind of version. You will work on Darlene's version, a little simpler, but more targeted to what she does. And so we will put it as an agenda item again when we come back to the next meeting. But I think we can assign, as we have in the past, 2 people to do Paul and 2 people to do Darlene, using the old format for the time being.
I don't think so.
Yeah, you can't create a
No.
subcommittee. That's the difficulty, because then that becomes a public meeting law requirement.
So how would you suggest that we do it to meet the new standards? If there are new standards.
You can do individual, no, there are new standards. You can do individual appraisals. What the Supreme Judicial Court said, of Massachusetts said, is when those are compiled, when they're released to the board, they have to be released to the public at the same time. So whether a member of the board compiles them, or an HR director, or whoever compiles them, when they're distributed to the board, they have to be made public at the same time. And that can be done when we post the agenda, for packet. But that's what the court says, is because the deliberation has to be simultaneous, public, with the board. And again, we can bring Mark Terry, our labor counsel, to the next meeting and speak further of it. But that's, in a nutshell, what the
Right.
court came down and declared was that.
I
Has to
think,
be
I think one way we could do it is to have each of us use the prior form, but not share it with anybody else. Bring it to either the next meeting or whatever meeting we're going to do the review, and then read off our comments during an open meeting, and have somebody responsible for transcribing that and come up with one consolidated
Who
form,
would do the transcribing?
whoever you want.
I mean, does it have to be a member of the board?
No, it could be a member of the board, or it could be,
One
be
could-
HR
Could be
director,
myself,
could be
the
HR director,
assistant.
could be whomever you delegate to do that.
When we do that, would we be also talking about compensation at that point?
That's up to the board. I mean,
Does that have to be in the public arena, or can that be executive session?
under the open meeting law, you can discuss strategy with respect to negotiation with non-union personnel in executive session. You can also conduct negotiation with non-union personnel in executive session. Those are the 2 provisions of the open meeting law that remain in effect and have been in effect for decades.
All right, so you have the calendar there. When is our second meeting
The
prior to the July 1st?
The 25th. You're meeting the 4th and you're meeting the 25th in June.
We have 2 meetings before that.
Well, your next meeting is the 4th of June, in 2
The
weeks.
next one after that is the 20th.
It's 3 weeks later on the 25th
All
of June.
right, so I think we should target that date
The 25th?
Yeah, to all have the review, their individual reviews of, all five of us need to do it. And that we will compile it, if you would come back at that time, to record it and average it out.
Question about compilation. So if it's going to be read aloud in open session, can we email it in advance to make it easier to transcribe, or
Yes, you can send them, but when they're assembled and comes in a unified
an actual
document,
document
when
that
it's
has to
distributed to
be?
you, it has to be sent to everybody.
Of course.
But can they be emailed to Jean?
Yes.
In
individually?
advance.
So that she
Because
has-
then when I'm reading what she's already got, it makes
Yes.
transcription a lot easier.
Yes.
So,
Her answer is
okay.
yes.
But she just can't share it with the
Right,
rest.
exactly. Whenever she shares it with you, she has to share it with.
All right, so can you send the the form itself, I assume you send it as a Word document, to all the boards, so that they all do it on the
Yes.
same, so if you go to put it together, you're dealing with the same
Cut and paste.
document.
Yes.
That makes
And,
sense?
and when do you want that submitted to me from each member? what date?
You should have it at least a week before, the
Yep.
25th.
Yep.
So that should be to you by the 17th,
18.
18th?
18th. Sounds good.
And that would be for both positions, town accountant and town manager?
Yes.
Okay, get them both done that night. Okay.
So you should let Darlene know she should be here on the 25th
Okay.
as well. Anyone else have any comments on the subject tonight? No?
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeannie.
Next, we have report and presentations. John Souza is here tonight.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Summary I'd like to distribute to you.
Thank you.
I'm pleased to report that we recently conducted two successful auctions for bond anticipation notes. I'd just like to go through the auction results with you and just explain the reason for these. The first one is a $450,000 tax-exempt note. It's a short-term note, 41 days, and it's for financing Roberts Field. This project and the next one were both approved, as we know, at the last fall at October town meeting. And so the reason for this is this short-term financing will, and since these projects are already well underway, this will help us to provide financing from now through the end of the fiscal year. And then when the new fiscal year starts, we'll issue long-term bonds. So that's the reason for the bond anticipation notes. For the Roberts Field note, we received 4 bids, and the low bidder was Century Bank with a bid of 1.75%. And then we took bids on a second note, and the second note was for $101,771, and this is for the Chelmsford Forum project. And we received 3 bids. The low bidder was Enterprise Bank with a bid of 2.20%. And just to explain to folks, the reason where this amount comes from, the $101,771, is, as you may recall, when the town purchased the Forum, the purchase price was $1,101,771. You may recall at a prior town meeting voted to appropriate $1 million of borrowing proceeds that were originally intended for stormwater towards the Forum. So this 101 is just the difference. It's a small piece between the stormwater bonds and the actual purchase price. And so one of the difference just with short-term notes is the board's not required to vote a formal motion like you normally do with long-term bonds. But I would ask you if you support this, just to please sign the documents. I know many of you have already signed them, which authorizes me as treasurer to borrow these funds. So I appreciate that.
Just one short question.
Sure.
The interest rate on the larger one is more favorable than on the smaller one. Is that typical?
Yeah, well, in this
It's the
case,
type of project that it is.
yeah, that's a good question, and I can explain that. In this case, we had to issue a tax exempt note, and then a taxable note. And the reason for that is Roberts Field is a public park, so that's a tax exempt note in the IRS's eyes. The issue with the forum is there's nothing wrong there, but because we all know it's a publicly owned facility, was purchased by the town, but whenever you have a public facility that's managed by a private company, such as the forum or the Chelmsford Country Club, the golf course, a private management company, the IRS has very strict regulations, and so it's just a small part of the total operation. The town gets revenue from it, but whenever you have a private entity managing a public facility, whenever we borrow short-term notes, they're considered taxable under the IRS regulations. And I've discussed this with bond counsel, when we issue long-term bonds in early July, those will be tax exempt. So not to get everyone confused, but whenever we issue short-term bonds short-term notes for something like the forum, it's taxable. So because that note was taxable, investors want to be compensated a little more, so the interest rate was a little higher. It was about 0.45% higher.
Thank you.
So I appreciate everyone's support, and we will go forward with the financing on this. Thank you.
So the appropriate motion would be to approve the tax exempt notes as presented? Just because you need a vote from the board. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, motion to approve the tax exempt borrowing as written.
Do we have a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Thank you, John. And we have the Center Water District presentation tonight.
Good evening. I'm Bob Delaney. I'm the superintendent of the Chelmsford Water District, and I appreciate you guys having us come before you again. And with us tonight, we have Chairman Bill Martin, Commissioner Ron Whitmore, Commissioner Bill Martin, and Business Director Lisa Velsch. And
I think you have John Harrington.
John? Oh, I'm sorry. I missed John. I don't know you guys have me every meeting.
Too quiet.
So,
That might be a problem during the election.
yeah. So the first slide we have here is the Chelmsford Water, is the town of Chelmsford, and for whatever reason, I'm looking at this thing here, and it's very tough. It's very tough for you to see, but in the pink up above in the top left-hand corner is North Chelmsford, and the blue section to the far right-hand side is the East Chelmsford Water District. And in the center is the Chelmsford Water District, and it's showing it in the light color and a grayer color there. The grayer one is our high service side, and the white sides are a low service side. They feed off of two different basins, the Concord and the Merrimack Basin. And the Chelmsford Water District's made up of 20 ground wells. We have a capacity for 3.7 million gallons of water. We have 3 treatment plants, 3 booster stations, the 5 storage tanks that facilitate 15.3 million gallons of water. We have over 190 miles of water main that we're responsible for, with 8,200 service connections and 1,510 hydrants. We also have a solar array at the Crooked Spring plant that does 0.5 megawatts for our solar array. The water district comparisons, hydrants, East Chelmsford has 134. North Chelmsford's got 402, and we have the 1,510. Miles of main, East Chelmsford has 17 miles. North Chelmsford has a 402, and the Center Water District has 190. Our service connections, again, East Chelmsford at the top with 625. North Chelmsford has a little over 2,700 service connections, and the Chelmsford Water District has the 8,200. Our average daily demands, East Chelmsford does approximately 125,000 gallons a day. North Chelmsford does 720,000, and the Chelmsford Water District does 1.8 million. And our withdrawals, again, East Chelmsford's got a withdrawal permit for 0.23 million gallons. North Chelmsford has 0.94, and the Chelmsford Water District has a 3.75. And as part of the Water District, here's the location of our office. It's at 20 Watershed Lane. So we're easy to get to. We're right off Mill Road. A lot of people don't realize where we are. We're tied down in the back, but that's where we are. What's this one? And then over here, we have the storage tanks. The far left-hand side is the Summit tank. In the middle there is the Turnpike tank. And then to the far right is the Lock Road tank that was built in 2012, replacing a tank that was built in 1940. And on the bottom is our solar array at Crooked Spring plant. And our treatment plants, the far left is the filtration plant with our green sand filters. The top middle one is the River Neck treatment plant with the aeration strip tower that goes in before we go in through the carbon. And the one to the right is our membrane filter package plant that we put at the Smith Street treatment plant when we brought that back online in 2012. And the bottom one is just our chemical, what a normal chemical room would look like, and that's the River Neck treatment plant. Now, and as far as the water and water conservation, as you can see here, that the majority of the water is used by the residents. 78% of our water is used for residents' supply, and then we have the other percentages of municipal use of 5%, industrial at 5%, and the municipal at 1%, and East Chelmsford at, that we supply water to at 5%. And in this chart here, as part of water conservation, we're required to stay under 65 registered gallons per capita per day by DEP guidelines. And as you can see, over the steady course of the last decade, we've managed to stay below that, hitting a total of 57 gallons this year of 2017. And the bottom one is our UAW, and that's our unaccounted for water supply. And again, that number has to be under 10%. As you can see, we've had a steady decline in the UAW. And this is another part of the Water Management Act, and this is our withdrawals and what we're allowed by DEP. So in the top one is the blue is the Merrimack Basin. The Merrimack Basin consists of our Crooked Spring and our Smith Street plants. We are allowed to pump 1.73 million gallons a day. And the Concord River Basin is on the River Neck side, which is our load service side. And we have between a permit and a registered volume of 2.02 million gallons a day. And as you can see that on the River Neck side, we are somewhere around 1 million gallons. So we have plenty of stores and capacity to supply anyone on the River Neck side of our system. And this here is another snapshot of our water management and how we obtain and how much water we pump from each of our well sources. And basically the ones to the left-hand side are from our River Neck side, and the ones on our right-hand side, they are Crooked Spring and Meadowbrooks and Meadowbrook 1, 2, and 3 are for our Crooked Spring plants. So these are the wells that all pump to our treatment plants before they go out with treated water. So we pumped 928 million gallons of water last year. And again, the water management, here's a breakdown of each of the basins themselves. And as you can see, we try to break it down so that we're using these wells at the same amount of time, so that if we do have have them down for cleaning, you have a backup ability to have one of the other wells come on. So we try to keep it so that we don't run into a situation where we draw down too much on one of our wells and lead ourselves to a problem with iron and manganese issues. We track. This is part of the DEP. They use water resource monitoring, so they track precipitation, they track the groundwater, they track the stream flow. So in here, what we've done is we've shown the tracking of our precipitation. And so you have a 7-year average for the northeast, running average up above in blue. It's cut right through the middle. I don't know if you can see it there. Back to it. So it's right in here. It's not going to show me. So anyway, you have the running average for the Northeast, we have our state running average, and we have the Chelmsford Water District. They're all clumped together in the middle there over a 7-year average. And as you'll see that in the years 2015 and 2016, we were in a drought. And we were down well below our precipitation levels, and that's what forced us to go into level 2. And the state almost came in with a full drought management program to all of us. In the last 2 years, 2017 and 2018, we're well above the norm, and right now we're saying much higher than we were in even 2017. This here is another gauge that's used by the EPA and the state monitors, and that's the the stream flows we have from the Concord Basin and the Meadowbrook basins. So as you can see, the discharge levels are pretty high on the stream flow is pretty high on those two levels. So the actual drought trigger is 0.78, and we're not even on the chart on that. So right now we're all in very good shape with the water from the stream, with all the water and rain we had. And this is the final one that the state takes a look at, but doesn't have the authority to give us any guidance over. But we use this because this is what our ground well levels are. So the one on the right-hand side is a continuous one from Acton. They monitor that every day. And what you see here is the green is in a good percentile. If we got ourselves down in the red, now we're running into problems with the groundwater levels being too low to pump, keep up with the capacities that we need to supply our storage tanks. And the one on the left-hand side is one that is located in Westford, and they monitor that once a month, sorry. And then we come to our water district that we have in all 3 districts, and it's our summer water management practice, and you'll see our pie sandwich boards out there, and we also have out our solar sign you see in the center of town. So we're level 1. We have plenty of water at the moment and good rainfall. So we'll go to level 2 if we get any high demands or problems with a drought. And so that's where we are, and that's where the other districts are at the moment as well. So what can we do to conserve water? Well, first of all, we have the facts and leaks. As you can see, if you have just a small leak, you're looking at 3,000 gallons a year. And then as you follow down through this chart here, you'll see what the water usage is with a toilet. So a toilet will leak up to 13,000 gallons of water in a year. And then you always want to look for these little signs here, the water sensor signs, because those are telling you you're buying fixtures and appliances that are water conserving units. And over here, how much do we use in our water? The average toilet is 19% of the water. Outside watering is our biggest user at 30%. So all these other factors all figure into the whole 100%. But what we have here is that outside watering is our biggest user. 9%. And then in here on the bottom, you can see out of the 30%, that 50% of that water that's being used for outside watering is wasted. And that's generally through improper irrigation systems or people just overwatering. And the final thing is the water sense. You want to look for this signature on anything you buy, toilets, fixtures for your toilets, your showers, your sinks. And then some of the projects at Chelmsford Water District and the acts we were doing, we replaced 654 feet of water main on Mylan and Woodlawn and Ideal. We extended the water mains to the end of the cul-de-sacs. All 3 of them were dead-end roads in the Westland area. And we did that in the fall of 2017, and we just completed doing the looping from Woodlawn to Wiggins, crossing property we purchased years ago. And so we directional drilled under the wetlands over there and connected it up. So that gives us a looping, which helps for our water quality, takes care of the problems we had with the dead-end lines at the ends of those roads. And it also allows us to do work in a system in an area that we don't have a lot of gates in, so that we're able to isolate them now, and we don't have to put a lot of people out of water while we're doing our repairs. Mill Road 2 was another project we had this past year. We got approval from the DEP to move our Mill Road 2 well. We used to have to do it once we'd have to turn around and have it cleaned every year. And so what happened is it was costing us an awful lot of money, so we went ahead and did some pilot testing and brought some observation holes and found out that we had better capacity 50 feet away. So we went from 50 to 75 feet away, got DEP approval on our own site, and put in well number 2, abandoning the old well. Our highest maximum daily flow was 3.6 million in June. And again, Chelmsford Water cost you half a cent for your water. And this slide here is just a picture of the typical directional drill that we've done in the last 3 years, looping hard areas to get, again, for water quality and also to provide for a large area so we're not isolated with shutdowns to get in sections of town. And this here is our energy management update. Again, production, total production, we're over 5. We have 550,000 kilowatt hours. Total array produced at this point is 6 million. And solar dollars saved this year, it's $102,000 on the solar array at Crooked Spring, with an additional $104,000 we got from our Desiree, our net metering that we have. So we ended up with a total savings of $206,000 on our electrical charges. And then this here is our annual report. I have that in your packets. We report that every year, so if anyone wants any information on what we have for our water quality and more about our system, you're welcome to read that. We have that available, and it's online, and you can see that at www.chelmsfordwaterdistrict.com. And if you have any further questions, feel free to call our Environmental Compliance Manager, Todd Melanson. He'd be happy to answer the questions. And do you have any questions? Yes.
Can you bring up the first slide, one that showed the 3 districts?
Yep.
Can you bring that slide back up?
Sure. Maybe I can.
Very beginning.
There you go.
It is.
Yes.
The next one that showed the amount of each district.
Okay.
That one's fine.
Yep.
Well, any one of those, they're all pretty similar.
Yep.
Does the, and again, it may not be a fair question for you because you're the central one,
Yeah.
but is the size of the districts have anything to do with the amount of water available in that area?
Well, it's not so much the area, it's what they were permitted for when they first came into existence. And when DEP put their stuff together in 1984, when they had the Safe Drinking Water Act, I'm sure that's when a lot of the changes went. And Center Water District applied for, obviously, more water withdrawal. They had more wells at the time. Everything was put in the 70s. East Chelmsford's small because they've only got the one well source in one place.
So could they have put in for more, or was there some overall?
I can't answer
idea
that
how it was
for
done?
East Chelmsford. East Chelmsford came in 1938, and they got their water from Lowell at the time. Chelmsford Water District's been in place since 1913.
And do we have presentations from all 3 water districts, or just the largest?
In the past, we've invited the other water districts to also present, and they have generally not expressed any interest to come before the board and present.
Okay. Anyone have any other questions?
I just I know that you kind of touched on it, but as far as the level 1 for water conservation, I think it would be good to really emphasize that is required of you to issue that, because people say, well, we've had so much so much rain this spring. Why did they implement a water conservation already?
Right, and that's something the state has set up with the Water Management Act, that we definitely have to come before them with a plan in place. And our plan in place goes May 1st. And it was agreed through with the 3 districts that May 1st would be our starting point. And we came up with a management plan that it's every other day, odd even, depending on what your address is. And it's 6 in the morning till 9 in the morning, or it's 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. It's not both, it's one or the other. And the other point is, if we get into a situation where the state took over, you'd be stuck with maybe only getting water once a week. So as long as we can manage our water and we stay there with the precipitation and we meet our demands and people, comply with the regulations, we shouldn't have any problems, and we'll be able to water every other day, which is more than sufficient for anyone that's going to grow a lawn. You don't need to water as much as people do.
I think you're 100% right, Pat, because no one understands
Right.
that at all. Is there any way we can put anything on the town's website explaining that if someone wanted to see what that's all about?
We have,
They have it on their website.
we have it on our website, and you also have it in a handout in your flyer, and we hand those out and give these out to residents.
So it's written on the back of the brochure there, and it's on the website, but we could certainly highlight it in a different
And
way.
where's the brochure available?
Through the Chelmsford Water District, we
I
have,
have to go to you to get it.
Or maybe.
No.
may-
It's
so it's online.
Online.
It's online for people too.
Online at your website.
Yes.
I mean, maybe if you could, say something on a bill or something that indicates that you have to do this. You don't have a choice about whether to do it or not, and.
It's a suggestion, yeah, we could put it on the bill. We have other things that are on the bill. Lisa takes care of the building and stuff, but,
All right,
yeah,
if-
it's a good suggestion.
I mean, just a way to get the word out, so people aren't asking, well, why do we have
Yeah.
water conservation when it's rained 100 inches or so far this year?
Right, yeah.
So just one comment, and I'm Lisa Balsich, and I do the billing. But we certainly have this information posted on board, and we can put kind of a news flash on our website. One of the areas that makes it a little difficult for putting it on the bills is we separate our district into 3 billing cycles. So if we did that today, there would be people that would be seeing it kind of at the end of the water conservation program.
Okay.
So certainly, we could get the information out, we could leave brochures with the town, if that would be helpful, or a blurb on the website that says something about it. But it does, at the very back of this brochure, outline specifically why DEP has us, all water districts, put these conservation efforts in place. But I'm certainly welcome any suggestions that we could get it out there, but I think that we could do that, leave some brochures with the town.
Have you had the opportunity to go on maybe Joe Reddy's show and talk a little bit about the water ban and how it is triggered and so forth? Just, again, you may think that everyone out there knows all this stuff, but it's, the more information you give out there, people, they're not mad about it, it's just why, and they'd like to know why.
Oh, trust me.
Well, it makes a lot of sense, especially when we have years that it's raining all the time. Why are we having a water ban? There's all kinds of, I haven't been able to get outside to enjoy the weather, it's been so wet. So I understand people's confusion about
I'm not
that,
thinking kindly
but.
of you at that point.
No, I don't.
But we could certainly look at that, the way that we communicate that, and it's a good point, Pat, because we do get those questions in the office quite often.
I'm sure they get them here, and I get them just going around town.
Right.
Sure.
Yep.
Joe, do you have any questions?
Oh, Bobby's good, and since all the 3 commissioners, yeah, I mean, they've been at it for so long, it's, they don't make any mistakes.
You have any questions, Emily?
I do have some questions, or maybe one with some follow-ups. So I noticed that 9% of water goes to leaks. Is that the leaks like shower and
Yeah.
running toilets you
Yeah, the
referenced?
UAW, the UAW.
Okay, so I know that if folks need insulation or new windows or new refrigerators, there's a program called Mass Saves that can come evaluate their house for energy efficiency. Is there anything like that that people could turn to for help with fixing leaks, for help with defraying costs of new equipment, new toilets, or even just the labor a plumber would require?
What we try to do with our meters is we look at what people use for water, and generally what happens is it leaks in the toilet. The toilet's where it's leaked, and usually it's it's the elderly people that don't hear it leaking in the toilet, and when they get the bill, they go, they say, I couldn't possibly use this water. And generally it comes from a situation like that. Devices, I mean, it's out there with you. You need to change your fixtures. Your fixtures will save you. If you look at a toilet that was put in the 1980s, they were using 7 gallons of water to a flush.
Yeah.
And then in the 90s and 2000s, it went to 3.5, and now we're down to 1.6.
I'm just,
So people have to
I'm just
update it.
thinking that, you know, some of these same people who have refrigerators from the 80s or who have not had their houses insulated or who have ancient windows, there are programs to help them with that. I'm wondering if there are any that you're aware of that might help someone replace an ancient toilet or anything.
I could certainly look, we could certainly look into that, but it's not in the water district's purview to.
Oh, no, I know it's not your job. I'm
Yeah.
just wondering.
Are there other-
Or information, because
Yeah.
I think that wasting 9% of your water on leaks is,
Yeah.
or 11 or whatever it was, that's a lot of water.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if there were a program that people could,
This program's called Water
Advantage of-
Smart. They can go on and look at Water Smart, and they'll give them ideas and tell them where they can look to make savings with their water. And again, we have them in the handouts and the packets that you have there. There are water conservation conserving methods that are put in place. But that's about all I could suggest at the moment.
thank you.
Okay.
Do you have any customers in Chelmsford that, in the end up with the water leaving town, like Chelmsford Ginger Ale or something like that? Some business that uses a lot of water, that the water goes away from the town.
Yeah, when industry moves out, if you have some high-tech, right now we have, you have some bio companies that are up in Turnpike that bring in more, they use more water, and we also, they're educated enough to know that they try to regulate and circulate their water so they're not having as much waste. As far as leaving town because the water's not available?
Well,
not-
no, leaving town and it's manufactured, whatever they
Oh.
manufacture, the water.
Oh, sold elsewhere? No, we don't have a brewery in town. No, we don't have a brewery in town that sells water like the ginger ale plant and
And
stuff.
does
no.
everyone get charged the same amount for water?
Yes, we have a 4-tier system, and we charge by the less water you use, the less it costs you for the water. The more water you use, our water rates go up. They go up on a step grade. And so what we're trying to do is trying to get people to save and conserve water, and their bill won't be so high. So it's a cause and effect, and the DEP likes that when you're trying to set up regulations to save and conserve water. So if you do a step tiered like that, it's more advantageous to the Chelmsford Water District and to anybody to do it. So you find a lot of towns and a lot of districts are doing that.
And is there any difference in the taste of water from one district or another?
Yes.
Yes, oh yes, yeah.
What causes that?
What's the chemistry that's in whatever you have in the ground in the
A
water?
mystery or?
The chemistry of the plants, of what you have and how often the water's treated. Our green sand filter treatment plants, River Neck was put in 2004. 3 years ago, we changed the media out on that one, and Crooked Spring came out in 2007, and we just did it a couple months ago.
But the quality of
Thanks.
the water is the same as far as health.
Oh yeah. I'm sure they have the same standards. We all have the same standards we have to meet. Again, the taste might be different because of a mineral content that's in it. It might be your piping that's in your home that changes it, but it's our water, this water, the
But it
Chelmsford
is
water.
pretty clear that the Chelmsford district is the best tasting water. That has been kind of overwhelming.
Not that he's prejudiced.
Right.
No,
right.
Is that what's in the bottles here?
Yes, it is.
yes it is.
Have you run it through a filter?
It's also in the pitcher. Yes.
No, that goes right, that's
Every
finished
drop
water
of-
out of the Crooked Spring treatment plant.
Every drop of water.
Like out of a tap or out of like a Brita
Oh.
filter?
Please.
No, not a bit of
Just
filter.
wondering.
Well, I live in North Chelmsford. I always take this
You
one
don't-
home with me
you
because
don't
it's
take that
the
home.
good stuff.
Yeah,
But they tell me it's the good stuff up there.
They
By the
do.
way, you get extra brownie points for wearing a white shirt and tie because,
okay, I like, got the blue colors.
thank you very
All right,
much.
thank
Any
you.
other questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, nice job.
We're now at town manager reports. And that first one sounds familiar.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple items, reports since our last meeting of a week ago, and two things I want to bring the board and the community up to date on. First one is the new EPA stormwater management permit has been activated as of July 1, 2018. As you may recall, At the end of June last year, they put a one-year moratorium on the new permit standard requirements. Last week, or two weeks ago now, they announced that the new permit will become effective on July 1st, 2018 for Massachusetts and New Hampshire, despite the fact that the litigation has not been resolved, nor has the mediation been resolved with those who appealed the new regulation. So unfortunately, we are now going to have to comply with the new stormwater requirements for pretty much drainage areas across the community. The first one is we're all communities, including Chelmsford, who are subject to the new requirements, have to issue a notice of intent by October 1st, and everything then becomes effective to the new standards. And so a long-winded way of what does this mean for Chelmsford? It means that at this point, we will be, meaning myself and the DPW director and so forth, will be asking to go before town meeting in October to fund the stormwater enterprise budget, which was adopted by the town a year ago, which was rescinded by the moratorium, but now has become effectuated. So all those items that we heard about a year ago in terms of all the storm catch basins have to be kept less than half empty at all times. The issues of pretty much going towards no sanding in the roadways, the twice-a-year sanding of all, in terms of winter applications, the twice-a-year application of street sweeping through every road in the community, the new standards for on-site and off-site stormwater drainage. Basically, nothing got modified from what we presented to the community at town meeting and to this board a year ago, other than the fact that there was a delay, which is now being withdrawn. And so we're working, obviously, to complete the information that we have to do to submit to the DEP, which is the administrative body for this in Massachusetts, and EPA. So we will have this, we'll meet the requirements for October 1st. But along the bottom line is we will have to ramp up, much as we were planning on doing a year ago, with the budget in fall town meeting, and then the full implementation being presented to the voters at spring town meeting in 2019 to become fully effective July 1, 2019. Now, I know this was discussed at NIMCOG, and Pat, you're welcome to jump in, but my understanding is nothing has changed.
Right, I mean, we didn't hear anything other than what you just said, so. I mean,
Well,
there's
that-
still a possibility it'll be, delayed again,
Right.
because at the last time, wasn't it a last-minute
Yes.
decision to delay it?
It was
So-
like July 28th, I'm sorry, June 28th,
Yeah.
before the July 1st. But for whatever reason, 2 weeks ago, they basically said it's becoming effective. They issued a press release, and there was sort of no, we don't understand why at this time. I mean, they could have announced they were going to, become effective 6 months ago, but they chose to do it 2 weeks ago. And obviously, a lot of cities and towns, including Chelmsford, are scrambling because we're basically, 6 weeks away from the start of the new fiscal year, having to do with meet the new requirements of the law. So that's.
So will you be putting it together as an enterprise?
Yeah, it'll be the enterprise fund, which would piggyback on as a surcharge to the town's sewer bills. So we're basically just gonna dust off the presentation, revisit the information we had from a year ago, and bring that before the community. So it's obviously very troubling because, we know that this is another cost to residents and businesses to maintain the services. And obviously, there are the environmental improvements as a result of this, but, we heard the concerns loud and clear a year ago at town meeting. And again, I think what you're going to see across the Commonwealth, for those communities that are subject to these requirements, and why I keep using those words, those communities that are subject to it, is not all 351 towns are subject to it. Most of your smaller rural communities out in central and western Mass are not subject to it because of, the fact they pretty much have country drainage in those areas. But you're basically, most of your eastern Mass and urbanized areas are subject to these new requirements.
If I remember correctly, when you presented it last time, it was
Yeah.
about $2 million, but
Yeah.
the town meeting reduced it to $1 million as a ramp-up.
That's correct.
Do you envision that same
Yeah.
ramp-up
Yeah.
program as opposed to funding the whole thing at
Yeah,
once?
because we're going to be a partially through the fiscal year. I mean, the bottom line is town meeting isn't until October 15th. So basically, you're talking a period that's really going to be effective November 1st through June 30th. But so we'll come in for the capital requests, we'll come in for the operating budget, and then, as I said, 6 months later, we'll be in for the full bore. And again, not just Chelmsford, Tewksbury, your Billerickers, Westfords, and so forth, all these communities that are subject to the new regulations, we'll be taking similar action.
And one of the interesting things that was brought up at NEMCOG is that Lowell is one of the communities that's
As an
suing.
appeal, yeah.
So they're not sure how Lowell is going to handle it, if they'll have to, because they are the ones going through the litigation, so we'll see what they do.
Is this the sort of situation that would warrant a special town meeting for approval of anything, or?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's going to get us any further ahead. The first item is the notice of intent. That's October 1st, and so I think we will meet that obligation over the summer with our consultants. And then, like I said, once that notice of intent is approved, then you go full bore. So I think we can get to October 15th. Okay. And then the other bit of news in terms of mandates in the towns, and again, this is one that also affects the water district, is the governor signed into law the new OSHA requirements for Massachusetts. It was signed into law on March 9th. It amends the state laws and it makes it real clear that the OSHA standards apply to municipalities in Massachusetts. The workforce safety will still be administered by the Department of Labor Standards, which is the division of the Commonwealth. But next February 1st, full OSHA requirements become effective for cities and towns, districts, and so forth, all public employees. What that's going to mean is additional costs for the community. We have to keep logs, we have to keep a safety officer, there's special training for police and fire departments that will go through this. And then there's obviously training concerns for DPWs, and even issues such as slips and falls in schools and other areas. We're now subject to the full OSHA requirements. So again, we'll be probably visiting this at Fall Town Meeting in terms of how we comply as a community, because if you fail to comply, then you're subject to fines and penalties from OSHA. Again, there are webinars that are being scheduled and are outrolling both as well as in-person trainings over the next several months in anticipation of the February 1st activation of this new law. So it's there's, like I said, some hefty items being put on the plate, as you can see in the areas of workforce safety as well as stormwater safety improvements. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's my report.
Can you
this evening.
just mention, if anyone's listening, just a rough idea of what is coming up on the Win Stanley project, just as
Sure.
a general thing?
Yeah, as many know, the land located in the center behind Center Brickhouse Pizza that's now sitting vacant next to the rail trail was acquired by Win Stanley Associates over a year ago. They had been permitted and then were modified for a permit for apartment units. We've met with the Win Stanley Corporation as recently as this morning. They are now changing that project to condominiums, and the number of units is going to be basically almost cut in half. There will be 32 condominium units constructed. The plans will be presented to the planning board in the next several weeks, and there'll still be the underground parking. There'll still be surface level parking, but I think what people will see from this is a smaller building footprint and more green space. So it'll be a modification to their approval on the project, because certainly all the impacts are now reduced. The number of units is reduced, the stormwater issues are reduced, the traffic issues will be reduced, and so forth. So this will now go to the planning board in the next several weeks. So it's I think how they explain it to us is the market for the upscale rental units is not present anymore due to a couple of factors. One is the amount of apartments that are being constructed in Chelmsford and in the area region. Also the fact that building costs have gone up for construction, and as well as interest rates. And so I think the combination of those three factors were explained to us were what has led them to now take on a partner and build it and construct it as condominiums.
Do you anticipate that this is going to affect Chelmsford's 10% affordable housing? Does that affect it at all?
Well, it will, because in order to build the density under our bylaw, they will either have to make 25% of the units affordable, which would be 8 of the 32, or they'd have to contribute to the Affordable Housing Fund. Their first iteration wasn't a contribution to the Affordable Housing Fund, and we anticipate that that will likely be the approach this time as well. So yes, so that would provide funding to the community. So the short answer to your question is yes, there'll be additional 32 housing units. They will contribute to the fund that would then allow for the construction of additional affordable units in the community.
And that's purely the housing authority that
It's
approves,
the planning board who
The
makes
planning
that
board,
decision.
excuse me, the
Right.
planning board that approves or
Contributes that
disapproves
fund,
that.
and then town meeting has to then vote the monies from that fund to fund affordable housing, similar to community preservation monies.
Just as a footnote on that, there was considerable discussion of their amount of contribution last time. It took
Yeah, I thought it was
quite a while.
low, wasn't it?
was low.
So-
Some people felt it was low, but it wouldn't have been, in the end, it was accepted, and so I don't know how that's going to affect it
I mean,
now.
the good thing is you will have 32 condominium property owners of what will be an upscale project located in the town center. And so that really, we believe in terms of the planning for the center and the revitalization of the center will be a good investment, because if those units are constructed in the, 2019 timeframe, you can then see how perhaps that revitalization may continue perhaps across the street over towards the Oddfellows project, whose lease expires June of 2020. And you can see how the whole vision of revitalization of the center may be accomplished by having this, live, work, play type of environment where you have people living in the commercial district of the center, who are adjacent to the rail trail, who are adjacent to the restaurants. And what we're looking at are 32 two-bedroom condominiums, probably of which would attract to probably many of the older residents in the community who are looking to downsize.
And so many of them actually could end up qualifying for affordable housing. So that's actually, I would just like to state that I would prefer to see 8 out of 32 minimally labeled as workforce development housing for people like our sewer maintenance technicians who could possibly qualify depending on their housing situation, for our seniors who qualify for assisted living. And it's obviously the whole point of workforce development is to fully integrate them into a community and to have accessibility to transportation and recreation, to have walkable areas, and that is a prime and excellent location for that, rather than shoving them off onto the outskirts, which is rather poor planning.
Well, that's what the elected planning board will decide at
Yeah.
their hearings in the months
Did
ahead.
they, with a smaller footprint, more green space, any more parking? Because that was
Yes.
one of their complaints. The boards
Yes.
was very concerned with the parking last time.
They would, the plan that I saw today would have 35 parking spaces underneath the building and at least 70 surface. So
That
you've
could be
got,
used for the rail trail.
exactly. There seems to be more than
Combination.
adequate parking, yes.
All right. Thank you, Town Manager, appreciate it. Next, we have the Board of Selectmen and Town Manager FY19 goals. And we have a document with the 2018 theoretical goals for the Board of Selectmen and Town Manager. As I remember last year, and I may be wrong, maybe you can remind me, George, if I'm wrong on this, we never really did vote on a final list. We had this as a suggested list, and then it kind of drifted off, and we never got back to it. Do you remember that?
I don't remember finalizing it. Do you, Pat? You were the chair, right?
I know we,
So-
we did talk about, recrafting some of the terminology, but, I thought there was pretty much, I don't know that we took a formal vote, but there was agreement, I thought, consensus that,
Well, I don't remember the
Check the minutes.
final version of it, but many of the things on here were accomplished.
correct.
And I think it's a good working document to start this year. I would rather see it, though, not say Board of Selectmen and Town Manager, really be ours, more so. There is a supplemental page that I think, Paul, you drafted on suggested 19 goals, which we can also use for our evaluation that we're going to be doing individually.
But what I drafted wasn't for me, this was, it was.
Well,
it was-
suggested.
It was
It was
suggested
for the board.
Yes.
And I think it's hit on a lot of issues that are coming up this year. I think it's a good start. And again, I think we should take this and work from this list and come up with a final version. I think there are a number of things on here that are going to be controversial, but that's the name of the game. And I think it's a good way to start, and we need to come up with this before July 1st. Last year, as I remember, we hung over again on these kind of things, and we really need to try to get it done. You, everyone agree with that?
Absolutely.
All right.
Would we like to schedule an extra session if we feel that that is going to be that big of a time
I
commitment?
agree. We need to try to get this done this
Because
year.
I feel like there is a lot, the list of things to accomplish in the next couple of meetings is huge. And so that feels like a lot of things to do. So I'm wondering if we shouldn't look at another meeting, an extra meeting, just to make sure we've got.
All right, let's see how we go along. And we will do that. Thank you. Any liaison reports, referrals? Why don't we start with you, Pat?
I just have a couple. One last Saturday, Agway hosted our Military Community Covenant cookout, and even though it did rain a good part of the day, we were lucky that the early part of the day was nice, and we had a pretty good line of customers that came by to have hot dogs, hamburgers, and soft drinks. Raised almost $240, so that was very nice. And as I mentioned last week, Agway provides all the hot dogs, hamburgers, the drink, the grill, everything, and all the proceeds go to the Military Community Covenant, so we definitely thank Agway for that. The other thing is also on Saturday, we had a new Eagle Scout have a court of honor where he was officially named an Eagle, and that was for Miles Plunkett, so congratulations to Miles. There's a lot of Eagle Scouts in the town of Chelmsford, and they're amazing in what they do for the town. We don't have to, projects they do that the town doesn't have to, so congratulations to Miles.
George?
Just, we had a nice announcement about the Memorial Day Parade on next Monday, and it's usually a real nice time. And I'd just like to ask the people to get out and show their appreciation to the veterans, especially those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice, which is what Memorial Day is usually about. But we usually have a lot of fun, so I just would like to see people get out and join the crowd,
Emily?
I would like to remind folks that the Chelmsford Community Read-In is coming up. You can contact Ginger Skoog at chelmsfordreadin@gmail.com. There is an official sign-up sheet as well. This is to go and read to the elementary schools and the lower middle schools, so 5th and 6th grade. And there are a few things as fun as reading to those age groups, and I would especially encourage the board to look at the middle school kids, because 5th and 6th graders are really a lot more aware of what is going on in their localities and on the planet than you give them credit for, or as adults we give them credit for, and to reach out as people running town government. It's so good for them to know that they can participate as well. So I would encourage members of the community to reach out to Ginger and to volunteer in the elementary schools and the middle schools. And as a former middle school teacher, I promise they don't bite. They're so much fun, and you might surprise yourself if you go and read with them. So.
Great. I don't have anything tonight. Are there any press questions tonight? None? Okay. Then, do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn?
Second. You can do it, George.
You gotta take a vote.
You gonna take a vote?
Gonna leave it
Yes,
hanging.
all those in favor? Aye. Right, and just to note that our next meeting will be held on June 4th, and look forward to seeing many people here. Thank you.